Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about a U.S. Navy military weapon that was issued to Captain Robert Speck during World War II. And I happen to have both the gun and his jacket. Hey, give me a minute to back up a bit because I recently did a video on this gun, which is a RZM PPK ordered by a party member. And remember in the video, and there is a link in the description, we talked about Dr. Rudolph Shuna. And then also, remember the Winklevoss twins? We talked about Winklevoss. Now, I asked you guys for some information, and it turns out we got a lot of really good information to help correct some of the things that I said that weren't quite right. So a special thank you to those of you who contributed, and a special thank you to Gerhard in Austria. Now, this is some of the information that I got. First of all, Winklevoss, his first name is Charles, which I didn't know. His first name is Charles. We did find him in Pittsburgh, and he served in a fighter squadron. He was actually part of the ground crew. He was in the 428th Fighter Squadron, and that's where he served during the war. Now, we saw the capture paper that he picked up this gun in March of 1946 and brought it home. When he came home, he worked as a mortician at a funeral home in the Pittsburgh area, and he died in 1972. Now, the more interesting piece, and a little bit of a dark history, was Rudolph Shuna. I had said that he was a teacher. Many of you saw on the documents, and you can see some of the documents here, that he joined the party in 1932, and he was a student at that time. Well, as it turns out, he was a student of law. So let me go a little bit over his history, because he was actually sentenced to 25 years in prison for war crimes by the East Germans. So let's do an overview just to correct some of the things about Shuna that I said incorrectly. I said he was a teacher. He wasn't. He worked in a law office. We have a picture here of Dr. Rudolph Shuna. You can see seems a little younger and might be a skinhead from this picture. But before the war, he actually worked as a clerk in a bank and then a discount retailer. He also worked in the Unemployment Bureau. We know that he joined the party fairly early because he joined in 1932. He also was a member of the SS, which I had not mentioned before. So that actually means he wasn't a school teacher just molding the minds of youth. He actually joined the SS and the party, and he went to school to become a lawyer. When he got out of school, he worked in the legal system. From what we can tell, he worked in law offices, mostly prosecuting those who were anti-Nazi, which would, of course, be communist and the Jews. After the war, it looked like he wanted to keep a low profile because he became a farmer, or he worked in an agricultural setting on the East German side of the border, and that turned out to be a huge mistake because in 1946, so again, he's working on a farm, 1946, he's arrested and sent to Buchenwald, and then in 1950, he was part of the Waldheim trials. Actually, when you look that up, they always say the so-called Waldheim trials because it seemed like it was more of a kangaroo court. And this is where the East Germans, pushed by the Russians, they decided to purge any former Nazi that took part in denouncing Jews and communists, later being executed. So there was over 400 people arrested as a result of this roundup. About half of them were executed. Their crime was listed as denunciation, which means they denounced somebody. And that's where you drop a dime on your neighbor and say, hey, I think my neighbor's a Jew, or I think so-and-so down the street is a communist. By calling people out, you would be rounded up by the Russians and later executed. He was spared execution, but was sentenced to 25 years in jail because of his work in a law office prosecuting Jews, communists, and other people. So his conviction was in 1950, and he was, and I said 25 years, but somewhere along the line, some kinder, gentler communists came along because he only served until 1956. So he served 6 years of a 25-year sentence, and he died in Hamburg in 1986. So one of the things I got wrong is he really was a Nazi and a member of the SS, and he was a Nazi party leader, at least at the end of the war, he was definitely a party leader. He probably was also entitled to the party leader PPK. and certainly would have gotten this holster for his gun. All right, let's transition from dirty Nazis and communists and talk about American heroes. How's that for prejudice? This is a Colt 1908, and it was issued to Captain Robert Speck during World War II. It was actually made in 1942. And why don't we take a closer look at the gun, because I know you guys are more interested in the gun, maybe, than the story. Come take a look over my shoulder. Okay, this is just a beautiful example. Now, some of you are looking at it, maybe even scratching your head saying, I thought that was a 1903. Well, the 1903 looks exactly like this. Here's a picture of the 1903, and it actually has a patent date of 1903. But when they made them in 380, see the caliber 380? The caliber 380 was referred to as the model 1908. The 32 caliber was the 1903. Obviously, the 32 caliber came first. Now, both of those are made more for the commercial markets, but some are marked U.S. property. So both the 1903 and the 1908 will sometimes be sold to the U.S. Army. It would be considered an officer's gun. Remember, the smaller the gun, the higher the rank. So sure enough, these only went to officers. Now, among the most valuable ones out there are ones that are documented to have gone to the OSS, or at that time, that was like the CIA. That was a predecessor of the CIA. And the ones that were issued to the OSS, I've seen them at $15,000. The 08 is much rarer than the 03. So this is a very rare pistol, not to the OSS, but the second most desirable one is the one issued to the U.S. Navy. So this is a 380 1908 issued to the U.S. Navy, and in this case, we know the officer that it went to. Here is the factory letter that proves that it went to the U.S. Navy. You can see here, Norfolk, Virginia. Actually 1944. Now, I mentioned that the gun was made in 42, but it was issued in 1944 and is along with a shipment of just 150 guns. Now, he lived most of his life in the Philadelphia area, which is where I am now. And this gun store just, well, it's a bit north of here. You can see that it was bought in 2022. And it was brought in, the jacket, it says the jacket and the gun were brought in by his widow and his son. And actually at the time of his retirement, he was a rear admiral. We can see here Admiral Robert Speck. I'll show you a little bit more about the jacket, but basically they brought the gun and the jacket into the gun store. The gun store owner bought it, and you can see there it's blanked out. But I have seen these guns being issued to the Navy, but with no attribution to an officer, easily going for close to $10,000. So anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000, and that's without the attribution. Let's take a quick look at the coat. Okay, I'm not a jacket collector. We have had several of these. Of course, the ones that are bomber jackets and fighter Air Corps jackets, they are very, very popular, but so are the U.S. Navy. We already mentioned that U.S. Navy, there's a captain, there's his name. What tends to shred easily are these sleeves. This one is in excellent condition, and by the way, these jackets can be $1,500, maybe more in this condition. Again, down here they tend to fray. This one is in excellent condition, and then in here it usually rips. So this jacket issued to him during the war is in great condition. I'm sure he wore something else when he became an admiral. This tag is important because people who collect these know that it's important to take a look at the tag to make sure it's not a fake. And it also says property of the U.S. government, from what I can see, but it is hard to read. So this is a jacket. Notice the fake fur is still in really good shape. And let me give you a little bit of background about Captain, later Admiral Speck. So this, we are going to be selling this gun as soon as we're done the video. We'll be offering it. So this is like a dossier packet, so that you got the letter, you got the receipt from the gun store. Here's a picture of a younger Speck, and then later, and you can see his service bars, his service ribbons, I should say. And I will read a little bit about his life. I think most of this information is from his obituary, but it's because it says Admiral Speck. And by the way, he died in 1990 at the age of 83. He entered the Naval Academy in 1927. In World War II, he won 2 Bronze Stars and the Asian Pacific Campaign Ribbon with 8 battle stars. He served and saw combat in Saipan, Tinian, the Marshall Islands, and then the Philippines. He was the commander of the destroyer Longshaw, and his vessel took part in operations connected with the invasion of Okinawa. After the war, he attended the Naval War College in Rhode Island and was assigned to command a destroyer squadron off of the Atlantic coast. He was named admiral in 1956 and given command of a destroyer flotilla in the Western Pacific. From 1961 to 63, this is interesting, he was the commander of all the destroyers and cruisers in the Atlantic Fleet during the period of the Cuban Missile Crisis. You think it was nerve-wracking for those of us who lived during that period of time, but imagine being the captain of the entire fleet during that. You figure if I screw this up, everybody in the world could die. Admiral Speck became commandant of the 4th Naval District and commander of the Philadelphia Navy Base. He was an avid Phillies fan and loved the Eagles, which is near and dear to my heart. I'm sure he attended many Army-Navy games there in Philadelphia before he retired. And he did retire from the Navy in 1968 after 41 years of service. Admiral Robert Speck died in May of 1990 at the age of 83. Interestingly, he died in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, which is only about 5 miles east of where we are right now. He was survived by his wife and his son Robert, as well as 3 stepsons. So to Admiral Speck and his family, thank you for your service to our country. And what an honor it is to get some of these family treasures and to be able to put them in the hands of a collector who really will appreciate and value these items as part of our American history. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel because I have a lot more to show you.